Alright, so today we're going to be rebuilding some cylinders off case Ingersoll loaders. These are commercial mini loaders, and these are the cylinders that are on them. This is a power steering cylinder. We're going to do a video for this. This is the bucket tilt dump cylinder, and these are the lift cylinders. And we'll be doing separate videos to show you. We also have videos for the 3-point hitch in the middle of cylinder, so check those out. As well as a little more detailed explanation of the tools we got. We'll put that clip in the end of the video. That way it's not in every beginning of every single video for you guys to see over and over, but if you want to watch it, it'll be at the end of the video, and links to these tools and stuff will be in the description. Now, this is a power steering cylinder off late 648 or 6018. The early power steering 648 cylinders are different, but this is for the later ones with the thread on the nut on the end here. So these are sandblasted. We're doing a restoration on a tractor, so that's why these are all cleaned up. Gonna make sure you get all the oil drained out of them. By doing that, you push and pull your rod in and out while you got your ports empty. And this down here has got grips for grabbing pipe and stuff on the vise down below. So wrap them in a rag. You don't want to go too tight with these. We see it all the time. People crank on these vices. They dent or damage these cylinders, and the piston gets hung up and your seals get worn right out. Or sometimes it's so bad that they don't even work. So just as much as you need to be able to do this job. And obviously, being round, it does fight inside the vices, but... And then these gland wrenches are really the right way to do it, these spanner wrenches. I mean, if you absolutely don't have them and you're in a real bind, you can put a pipe wrench on here. Some guys will hit these holes with a punch and get lucky. These little cylinders are not as bad as some big construction and farm cylinders, but use the right tool or a tool that's designed for it. You're going to have some residual oil in here, so just be prepared. Most times you can pull these out by hand. Let that drain out for a little bit so you don't make a mess. Alright, so you're going to want to inspect the bore. Make sure there's no big grooves, big scratches, any damage, debris. You're going to shine a flashlight in there, you're not going to be able to see it. We need to inspect this and clean it, but we'll get to that. And the first thing we got to do is remove this nut, these nylock nuts. The easiest way to do is put one end in the vise if you can. Try not to put the vise on the rod itself, but if you can on these ends or the nuts, sometimes you can go vertically. But I think this may hold enough to do what we got to do. These nuts tend to be on pretty tight, or they should be at least. 15/16. We'll see. The device is going to hold that. There we go. Enough to get her off. You don't want to reuse these nylocks inside these cylinders. These sometimes will have a tendency of working their way loose anyways, so you want to use a new nylock. Then you need to pay attention how things came apart. There's an O-ring in between here. So what I try to do is keep everything in order when you take them apart. That way you kind of know roughly how things were. Your O-ring is going to sit in this recess here. So that side is going there. And then this piece here. There we go. So this one, it doesn't matter. I don't think both sides are the same, but I would go back putting the same side on. You can see the pattern. And then your gland nut slides off. So we've got the simple O-ring on the outside. That's kind of a backup seal past the threads. We'll just set that aside so when we match things up, everything looks good. We have got U-cup. Alright, got an O-ring here. And then we got a U-cup. I got the U-cup that was facing us. And on this end we just got a regular one wiper seal. Get behind these before you try prying them out and make sure you get in them good. They will rip and tear, so sometimes you got to do it a couple times if you don't get behind them far enough. That'll work. wiper. And this is disassembled now. Again, you're going to want to pay attention. If you need to take pictures, do whatever you got to do. So you want everything clean. Make sure your rod's in good shape, no pits, no scratches. This one's perfect. Your threads look good. That's all the cleaning that really needs. It's important to be clean with everything. Is dust, dirt, sand, anything at a couple hundred or a couple thousand psi or whatever yours happens to be set at, and whatever you're working on is do a lot of damage. It's like sandblasting. You get dirt and grime and dust in here under that pressure, you do a ton of damage. So we're going to take these two pieces over to the parts washer, or our little mini parts washer, and clean them up, and we'll be back. Alright, so here's our kits we sell. These are very high quality seal and O-ring kits. You can find them at caseingersolltractors.com. So we like to put a new mat out when you're doing the installation. We got a little O-ring, the 2 cups. Alright, so I swapped out the black seal that was in our kit for this yellow one. We've got a few of these left. I'm painting these cylinders black, so I wanted to put the yellow seal in there. Not that it really matters, but that's where we're at with that. So we took these through the parts washer, but you always want to go through and make sure everything's clean, double check. See the crap that came off there? You're going to do the same thing, make sure you're using a clean rag. And what I do is just kind of fold this in a couple times. All kinds of stuff still in there, even though it was ran through the parts washer, brake cleaned a couple times. You can get all that stuff out of there. So we're going to install our U-cup. I just want to put a little bit of oil or grease or Vaseline works fine on these things too, just to pre-lube them. Helps with the install and the first couple times they run. So the way you want it to end up is the side that's got to face you. And then as you do this, you want to kind of keep this from flipping over like that with the other hand. They get tricky, especially when they get greasy. And you want to keep this as even as you can so it's on itself, it doesn't flip behind it. And you don't want to open them up any more than you have to. And then once it's where you want it, make sure you got it in the groove where you want it. If there's 2 grooves, you got to be in the right one. So most of it's already in this groove that it's supposed to be in. I'm going to support the bottom with this other spoon. I'm going to work the bottom in and make sure the O-ring stays in the groove of the U-cup as it's working itself in. It can be tricky sometimes. If it pops out, you just got to put it back in. So if it pops out, you just work it back in, it'll go. And then make sure you seat it with the back of your O-ring spoon. The way these U-cups work, the O-ring actually doesn't do any sealing. It keeps pressure expanding on the seal so it stays where it needs to be. And so it actually, the lip of the seal does the sealing. So it's just there to exert some force and not let the seal collapse in. And next is this actual, it's an O-ring, and it helps keep this seal where it belongs. So it doesn't really necessarily do a ton of sealing, it just takes up the gap in there. Obviously keep your tools clean when you're putting that stuff in there. These U-cups, I usually don't put a ton of lube on the seal to get them installed, because they're not these U-cups, these wipers, because they will fight. I do like to put a little bit in the groove, and then once they're in, I'll coat them so they're pre-lubed. And you're going to do the same thing with this. The direction you want it to end up is facing you. And just work that in there. I usually put them about halfway in, and then same thing, you're going to want to center this rod wiper. As you do this, it's going to want to buckle, so keep it centered. It's tricky if your hands are greasy. This one's almost a little too big, but we do have a smaller one, but this is what I pulled out, so this is what we're using. And then again, you want to get it into that cavity. This is why you want to keep them level, or even I should say. Get it into that cavity, and then let it fall into place. And then as you're opening this up, you kind of want to work it, let it position itself if you can. Sometimes they go right in, other times you're going to have to mess with them a little bit like this, which is pretty common. So again, I like to support the bottom with a screwdriver with a little pressure, or a back of one of these spoons. And again, this is concave in here, so your lip is going to fit under here, and just gently work it in there and it'll go. These seals are pretty resilient. They spring right back in if you don't beat on them too bad. And then just push in here with firm pressure and seat that. And then this piece is already redone. And then now we've got to assemble this section. So we got 2 new piston cups. And we got the new O-ring that's going to go in between. So this O-ring right here, again, free a little bit. Air flush, more or less. Coat the inside, the outside of these just a little bit. So something wasn't looking right, and I went back to the book. So this was put together wrong, and it worked, and it probably would work fine either way. But this O-ring here is actually supposed to face out towards the threads. And I think it's actually there to seal off the threads a little bit too. Even though this nut and everything's encapsulated, I think it's just there to seal that way. So it came off in this order, like that. But I'm going to put it on like the book recommends, going this direction. Okay, so again, the O-ring is on this side facing the threads and the nut. That's how we're going to put it back together. Get ahead of yourself like I did. After figuring out this O-ring should have been put on the other side, we forgot to put the threaded gland nut with the yellow seal you see in the frame back on first. So that goes first, then the following steps. But after we pulled this off to put it back on the second time, I forgot to put it on first, so just pay attention, put that on first. Lube goes a long way on everything. Alright, so we're going to reassemble. Make sure you got the inner bores here, the O-rings, everything here lubed up. Make sure your shaft's clean. A little bit of pressure and just twist it. And then here they're going to tend to be a little more difficult. There's not a lot you can do about it, but they will go. Usually I clean these up a little bit too. This one feels fine, felt fine. So something like that works. And you don't need excessive amounts. This is probably a little much on the inside here, but on the outside you can't actually have too much, as we're going into a cylinder with some pressure after. Okay. And then this is again where we're changing it from how it came apart. We're going to have the O-ring facing out. And again, the threads are going to probably catch it like they did there. But just make sure it gets seated in that recess. And it will sit in there. Just be gentle, you don't want to damage anything, but you want a good tight seal here. Okay, and then now we're going to put this other piston cup on here, which needs a little bit of lube. And then the spacer, again, I don't think it really matters, but you can see the pattern from the piston cup, so that's where we're going. Then the new lock nut here, we're going to use a grade 8. And I guess ultimately I probably could have put this and should have put this O-ring on first. Lube this up one good. This is essentially a backup ring for those threads. Makes a final seal. And this should have went on before I put this all on, but it'll be okay. So before you assemble this, be sure not to forget this like I did. And then again, kind of just, I like to walk these on so the threads don't catch. And I walk them over the spoon instead of walking the threads, or walking the O-ring over the threads. I walk them over the spoon and just walk it down and off the spoon. Make sure it didn't roll or twist, I should say. Sits where it needs to be. You're going to want to support this in the vise, clamp it down in the vise. Again, you don't want to clamp on your rod. You clamp on your end and the nut. Make sure it's pretty tight because you got to put these on with some decent force. I don't know what the torque spec is. The manuals say secure them, but I like to go pretty good and tight. They're fine thread, and it is important that these lock in here good. So you're going to make sure you get that good and secure. And ideally, putting this in the freezer for a few hours before you assemble is really kind of the best way to do it. And sticking this out in the sun, because these things are going to want to fight. Okay, just pulled this out of the ultrasonic cleaner, which we had set at 180 degrees or so. I don't want to spray anything cold in here, and the cleaner has got clean fluid in it right now currently, but definitely want to just make sure it looks pretty clean, looks pretty good. And then this bad boy just came out of the freezer, and she's pretty cold. Again, you want to coat the inside of this really good. You see she's so hot, it's melting the Vaseline, which is fine. We're going to coat these down. Try not to let things cool off too much or heat up. I'm going to set this in here. Set this in here. You just got to walk them in. You're going to fight. They're going to rough up a little bit on those threads, but walk it in, and then generally standard pressure. If you need to spin it, spin it. The first one should be the worst because it's actually facing the opposite way. Like that. Now, just make sure this rod has got lube in it as well. It's obviously so cold it's gelling up. Get this started a couple threads. And at this point, lightly tap this down. Get your piston working down towards the bottom. Doesn't have to bottom out, but just get it down there. Let the hot cylinder hit the cold. You can see it's threaded much easier because of the temperature difference. A piece of nylon is shrunk in here because it got cold just fine. And just get this thing set up a little bit. Once the roll ring makes contact, you're good for a minute. And let them both kind of equalize temperature, get to room temperature before you torque that cap on. Use the equalized temperature. Now we're just going to put this on. And notice it, I don't know if you can see it, but it's going harder by hand than it was before. So we're going to replace these. We got heavy duty rod ends that are greasable for these. I'm going to leave it on here while we paint. That way it just covers up the cylinder and the threads on the cylinder. And all we got to do is just tape this when we're painting. And then we'll put our new greasable heim joints on there. And get rid of these non-greasable ones. You can find those on our website at Ingersolltractors.com. All the power steering cylinder ones should be right-hand thread. I have yet to run into a left-hand thread. The tie rod ones on the loader are where they get a little tricky. Some years everyone was right-hand thread. Some years you had two right-hand threads on the tractor and one left. And some years you had a right and a left. So it's best to take yours off and figure out what they are. Alright, so I got that on there. I got my towel in there to protect the cylinder. We don't want to go too crazy here. I've got this in here so that it can't turn. It's not pushing on the fitting. It's actually pushing on the bung of the cylinder. And these you want to get tight. So now you see the O-ring disappeared. And now you just give these a good tightening up. You can put a pipe on here too. You know, it's only going to go so far. Use your judgment. And this will go off to paint. We'll obviously clean it down one more time and get all the the lube off it and stuff, but then it'll go to the paint department and she's ready to go. You don't really need a bunch of specialty tools, especially for these smaller cylinders. It does make life a lot easier. We're going to go over some tools for rebuilding hydraulic cylinders and what they do real quick, and what you kind of need, what you don't need, and what you can use in place of. We also provide a hydraulic cylinder rebuild service. You can ship us your cylinders or drop them off, and we clean them, go through them, rebuild them, and then paint them up quick and send them on your way. So to take the cylinders apart, these are going to be all for different size cylinders. You don't need all these tools, but it's the same purpose. So some cylinders are going to have holes in the side here where you would use these kind of spanner wrenches. Got a whole set here from Williams USA. So you just put this in here, and then this locks on here, and you tighten and loosen. And obviously you got different sizes with different pinholes. Under the same theory, some cylinders have the holes up here, and you have these nice adjustable ones. These ones I think are OTC, and then they'll go into your holes, and then the pin sizes are different as well. And then this lets you do a bunch of different cylinders as it opens up. You can do bigger cylinders. This is for much bigger cylinders. You'll see the pin sizes are reversible and changeable. These little hand ones are for some smaller ones too. It's the same principle. Great set. Built very well. Covers a lot of sizes. This tool we just got, this is nice and heavy. Soldy, I guess it is. And you can change out these pins to different sizes. They offer multiple sizes. If you need to, you can put a pipe on here. Some of the ends of these cylinders are on really super tight. I mean, people put multiple feet long pipes on here, or use hydraulic jacks or presses on the big construction equipment. You're not going to need that at all with this case Ingersoll stuff, but just wanted to show you kind of what we use and what's out there. That covers that stuff. O-ring picks. I've got countless O-ring picks, all different styles. I like them. You don't need them all. You don't need nothing but a screwdriver if you have to. But these are nice and long for getting into tight places. These are Ullman. These I believe are USA made. These O-ring spoons I really like a lot. You'll notice they're kind of spooned and thin. You don't damage your O-rings. I use these especially on install. Like different shapes, different angles. And then I've got some Backhoe picks with different angles, different loops. Again, another spoon. These are nice Backhoe, big ones for bigger stuff. And then these are, I think they call them cat's paw or something like that. Yeah, Backhoe cat's paw. And these are super nice, very affordable set. Again, different shapes. Make life easier, not a necessity. I like to have a pair of pliers that have some kind of plastic or rubber grip. It makes not damaging cylinders and rods and stuff if you can help it. You can always wrap a rag around something if you need to too. But these are handy to keep around when you're doing hydraulic work. These are really handy for all kinds of stuff. You can use these for the O-rings and cylinders, and you can buy with just these two. One's a Backhoe and the other one is Lyle tools. They both come in sets of 2 with different angles. Definitely, it's a good idea to have a soft hammer, a plastic, rubber, or a dead blow. You don't want to be doing damaging these things. And then get into these a little bit more. These are much needed if you're doing a lot of cylinders, and even if you're not, they save a lot of frustration. They're fairly inexpensive. They're for U-cups or rod wiper seals, and when we install them, we'll show you. We've got a couple sets in different sizes, but you slide the U-cup or the seal in here, you twist this, it bends it into a funky shape, you drop it in, and it opens up, and it's in there, and you don't have to fight it. These are well worth the small investment. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. Check out all the parts we offer and custom kits at caseingersolltractors.com. We've got a lot of information and pictures there as well for Case Ingersoll brand. And thanks so much for watching. See you the next time.